What? Okay, she's coming out. Where's my brush? Stunning and iconic. Oh, that's so iconic. Pause from scratch. Hi. Hello. Welcome back. I've had a bit of a day of it. My boiler had to get fixed and we spent the last few days with no hot water. So yes, I'm definitely having a shower later. My phone's also on low battery, so I'm trying to keep this going. I am doing yet another movie roundup because I've watched like 6 films in like the past 2 weeks that I haven't seen before, or I mean, some of them I've seen before. I'm so confused as to what I'm doing here. They're just films that I watched because I'm more of a TV series person, and I've also been doing a lot of rewatching RuPaul's Drag Race with my mum. And also she's now currently watching All Stars, which she's never watched before, so I'm like experiencing that with her. So I haven't been watching a whole lot of films. I've also had like other things to do. Pardonnez-moi, monsieur. So, let's get right into it. The first one I'll be talking about is Saw the Final Chapter, the 7th Saw film, originally intended to be the last. However, they, can always resurrect a franchise. So then we had the 8th film, Jigsaw, which was like 2 years ago. And then this year was meant to see the release of Spiral, which is like a spin-off. But the franchise is a tricky one. Off the bat, do not watch this film if you have not watched the first 6. Like, this was a series that gave up being accessible after like the 3rd or 4th one. I would honestly say it's probably unwatchable if you haven't seen the first 6, because the main game, because there's always a main game with that guy who like was a previous victim and has this whole support group, whatever. That's like the main trap. That's what all the torture porn stuff comes into it. But it's like so irrelevant to the main plot. Like, it isn't part of the plot. It's just something that's also going on. And like I guess it's kind of a diversion for the killer. But like when the game finishes, you're literally just standing there like, I don't even think they have a conclusion. Because if I remember correctly, like, someone dies. I guess this is a spoiler, but, I'm not really recommending this film, so. Like, the last guy, the main guy who's been going through this trap, it's kind of a mirror of, like, the Saw 3 and I think Saw 6, where it's one person going through a load of traps and they have to, like, basically save other people. I guess same as Saw 4 as well. Saw 4 was a bit different because they was actually, like, going around about instead of just being in this one facility. But that guy survived at the end, I'm pretty sure. Like, yeah, he's, got holes in his chest where he's torn his flesh off. But, like, he's not bleeding out. He's just a bit injured. But, like, he fails to save anyone. And then, I'm pretty sure you don't, unless I've forgotten, you don't see him again. So it's like, what happened to him? Did he just die there alone? Did he starve to death? Did the police ever find him? And all the stuff in the main plot, like, honestly, by about the 4th, 5th film, it just became, there was too many twists in the Saw franchise and the Saw story. And there's another big twist at the end of this one, which is really weird because it's meant to be the final one, but in like the last 5 minutes, they have like a huge twist that they try to, but they cannot adequately explain such a huge twist in like a couple of flashbacks that last a few minutes. So that was a weird one. And like in Jigsaw, they don't follow it up because Jigsaw was meant to be a sequel, but also revitalizing the brand so new viewers could watch it. So obviously there's no reference to like anything in the last half of the series. And even me being a Saw fan, like, the cops in it are pretty unwatchable. The killer is... the actor does his best, but he's just a bit, like... I feel like at this point, I'm, like, don't know what the killer's motivations are. There's a character called Jill, who... not a great actor, and a lot of the acting is kind of reliant on her. She's quite a big character in it. Honestly, the best part of this film is the main trap. I was kind of invested in it. Which is why it was so disappointing that it didn't turn out to be important at all. And also, like, okay, they always try and implement some twisted logic as to how the victims of these traps deserve it, right? And there is kind of, if you really think about it, there is a reason why not as much care would he put into this trap specifically about it being, fair. But there's someone who is in one of the traps who he even says is not guilty of anything. Like, Jigsaw admits they're not guilty of anything, but they're still in a trap. Like, I get it's motivation for the main guy, because he's like, you don't deserve anything. You haven't done anything wrong. I want to save you, especially like even more so than all the other people I'm trying to save. But it was just a bit stupid. Like, again, I'd also be complaining though, because sometimes they're like, you did this, you pushed in front of a line at Walmart, you deserve to die. It's like, okay. But yeah, saw the final chapter. I hadn't watched it in a while. I think most of these are on Netflix. I think I watched it on Netflix, and I was like, yeah, there's a reason I haven't revisited the second half of the Saw franchise. Like, I've watched the first one again. I've watched the second one again. I like the second one. Second one's good. What? I actually don't mind 6. I think 6 could have been a perfectly good final entry. But 7 is probably the worst one, if not one of the, at least one of the worst ones. And I wouldn't recommend watching it, especially if you haven't watched the first 6. I mean, if you've watched the first 5 and you're like almost all the way through the series, like, you might as well see how it ends, because they do add something new. They do answer a couple questions from the very first Saw that were left unanswered, but then they also bring a whole load of new questions. Basically, it's like any TV show finale these days. They're like, we're totally going to wrap it up and not present you loads more questions for the sake of twists and drama, But yeah, so that's that. Then the next one I watched was The Platform, which is a Spanish language Netflix original horror film. I think I don't know if it's Netflix original in all places, but it is in the UK, and I think it is in the US. Now, I started watching it, and I noticed that the opening titles weren't in English, and then I started hearing a character speak in English, and I was like, hold up. Okay, gotta tell you something about myself. I don't watch dubs. I don't like watching dubs. I don't care how much dialogue's in a show. I don't care what language the show is written in. And it's not like a superiority thing. It's just I don't like watching dubs, because I don't feel like I'm getting the authentic experience of the film. Because I think how an actor speaks is very important to a role, and I want to hear the original actor's vocal performance and see if it complements their physical performance. And I just think, I don't know, I think it's the least I can do, if that makes any sense. Like, it's not that much effort. Like, I really enjoyed The Platform, and reading subtitles wasn't a problem for me. Like, it wasn't... There's actually quite a lot of moments. It's not a super talky film. It is in the first half, but especially the second half, it gets a bit less talky. But it's not like a crime procedural. You're not hearing, like, Evans 204, she came in through the window, I'm not going to spoil this, because I would recommend this film if you're into horror. It's really gory, but it's a really good example of how a film can be really gory and still have substance beyond, oh, look, we showed someone's intestines, we're hardcore. The main character, Goreng, is quite a good main character. I think you really understand his journey. And there's a lot of other characters, because the basic premise of the film is you go to this facility for many different reasons. You can be put there against your will, you can volunteer, you can do all these things, but if you end up in this facility, every month, you wake up on a floor. I'm not going to tell you how many floors there are, because that plays into the plot quite a bit. You wake up on a floor, and all you have is your bedding, your clothes, water, obviously, I think a mirror for, like, shaving and stuff. And that's all you get. Oh, and I think I said like an item, like, of your choice, one item you get to have. And then every day, this platform comes down from the middle. It's very sci-fi in that it's just like a floating platform. It's not grounded in reality. It's not like presenting this like a real building you'd see like in 2020, because it's Honestly, like, it wouldn't have been that expensive, but it is quite impressive how many times they do the thing with the platform of there being, like, nothing, like, there's nothing above or below it. I don't know. I'm not a special effects person, so I don't know how they do that. But the thing comes down, and there's, that's where you get your food. The twist is, everyone at the top, it goes to the top floor first, and it goes down, 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 down. All you get is what is left behind. And you have a certain amount of time, you get to eat there, and you aren't allowed to keep any food on the platform, otherwise it either freezes you to death or boils you alive. Like the room. So, you have that one meal a day. Based on what they present, it seems like you only get the platform for like a couple minutes. And all you get to eat is the stuff you can grab while it's there. And it's sort of, this becomes, the whole film is sort of a metaphor for like capitalism. Because people in the prison, I guess it's a prison, people in the facility point out that if everyone just took all they needed, then everyone would be able to eat, which is capitalism. If we spread all our resources, everyone would be able to get by, but in a capitalist system, the ones on top who have all the power, whether it be they've earned it, or as this film presents, a lot of it's just by chance, you're on the top today, they can do whatever they want with no care for the bottom. And there's a lot of, like, you don't speak to the top. Why? Because they're above you. You don't speak to the bottom. Why? Because they're below you. Like, it's this idea that everyone in this facility just has been taught that you are lesser than the people above you and you are better than the people below you. And there's no reason, because it's like, surely you'd be sympathetic to the people on the lower floors, but they're not. They don't think they deserve respect, even though you could be in their position next month. It's interesting, and, get political. Capitalism isn't, a very nice system. I'll just, leave that there. But I think the film does a good job of, it's a really strong message. However, I also think the film is just so intriguing. I personally didn't think it was over the head of capitalism bad. Blah, blah, blah. Although, to be fair, that's not like a message that shouldn't be beaten over the head. It's like the climate change thing. Like, I think sometimes a message being too overt is, like, a bit clunky, but isn't a bad thing. But in this film, I personally thought it was a very good blend. Up until the last 20 minutes, the film's like an hour and a half, I think. The last 20 minutes, it really starts to focus on the message rather than the actual plot within the film. And the ending, as much as I got what they were going for, I understood it, and it wasn't a bad ending. The ending makes no sense in context of, I don't know, not that it didn't make sense. The ending was unsatisfying if you're only thinking about the narrative rather than the message and the messages and the connotations that it has. However, if you're thinking about it from the perspective of what it means on, commentary on capitalist society, it makes sense. All the performances are good. It's really well written. I think it feels really long in a good way. Like, you feel like it's like hours and hours, but not because you're bored and not because you're wanting it to end. You're just like, so much has already happened, and things keep changing, and it goes through, it spans quite a long period of time, this film. When I saw it, I assumed it'd be like, you wake up in this building, and then, you spend, like, it's, like, set over, like, a couple weeks. But they spend, the film's set over a long time period. And I'd recommend it. Of all the films on this list, if you're a horror fan, I would definitely recommend it. And it's probably one of my favourites that is on this list. Next is The Breakfast Club. Now, this isn't one that I recently watched. However, my college, I do A-level film studies, to kind of get people going and to make people less bored, they do this thing where it's like film club. Every week they're going to suggest a film, say where you can watch it, and then we can give our thoughts. I've already seen The Breakfast Club, but I was like, now I'm thinking about it. I want to see, I want to talk about this film, because I watched it a year or two ago, most recently. I've watched it like 2 times, and the last time I watched it was like a year ago. I actually watched the Victorious parody first. If you don't know Victorious, if you somehow didn't know, or you're not from UK or America and you didn't have Nickelodeon, Victorious was a Nickelodeon show, and they do an episode. Nickelodeon's so weird that so many of their shows have references that you're just not going to get if you're a child. And doing a parody of The Breakfast Club was one of them. But it was so fun because I was watching it through the eyes of someone who'd seen the piss take version, and now I'm watching the serious version. It is good. I do like The Breakfast Club. It felt quite short. It probably was quite short. It's a film about stereotypes, and the whole message is like all these teenagers are more similar than they thought, and they're much deeper than just the categories they feel they have to fit into. And the whole film is set inside their school, their high school. The whole film is just set inside their high school, and it takes place over one day. And most of the film is just them pissing about, or the characters interacting, or talking about themselves. But, like, it works. Like, because it's just so interesting. I can't think of a film that is like The Breakfast Club. It's quite 80s. It's a fucking 80s film. It's leaning into and embodying the 80s whilst also breaking down people's perception of the 80s, whilst also being made in the 80s. Like, before the decade was even over, whoever made The Breakfast Club was like, okay, so we have to do a retrospective, look into ourselves, and realise all these things we think about ourselves don't fucking matter, okay? We're people, we're humans, kumbaya, great. And it's kind of like The Breakfast Club's also like a little bubble, The Breakfast Club itself. All these kids are like, connecting and stuff. And then they, obviously, presumably, they go back to regular high school life. And it's kind of a question of, was that just a thing about The Breakfast Club? Was it just only when they were in, this detention, did these sides of them come out? And when they went back to high school, when they went back to, regular programming, did it just revert straight back to what they were? Does it change them? But, you also don't, I don't need to know what happened to the characters. Oh my god, imagine a Breakfast Club sequel. Ugh. Imagine a Breakfast Club remake. If there isn't... I've never heard of a Breakfast Club remake, but mark my words. I mean, they did a Heather's TV show a couple years ago, which I actually liked, but it still wasn't amazing. So, Breakfast Club, it's coming. Be ready. So yeah, that was The Breakfast Club. I'd go watch it, especially if you want a bit more of a chill film. Yeah. Next, Defiance. So this is a war film starring Daniel Craig, and I feel like also that guy who played Sabretooth in the X-Men films. Maybe he wasn't. Was he from X-Men Origins? Okay, I feel like he was the guy who played Sabretooth in the X-Men films, but I'm also not sure if he was playing them in the original trilogy or the origin film or both. It is quite long. I don't know how long the runtime is. I'll flash up here, but it felt like it was on for a while, and it's basically about World War II, Nazi Germany, and it's a band of Jewish people who basically say, we're not going to listen to you anymore, because it seems, at least in their area, because I don't know, I can't remember when the bits are set, but the concentration camps are still half myth. Jewish people and obviously other minorities aren't sure whether to believe they're real or not, so aren't necessarily scared of going to them. But this group of Jewish people, which gets bigger and bigger as the film goes on, is like, no, we're not just going to sit and be controlled. We're going to go out, we're going to live in the woods, we're going to have camps. But obviously they're persecuted by Nazis. There's a lot of drama between the characters. There's three brothers. And they all have a lot of drama. There's wives, there's power struggles, there's communist alliances, there's all these things. And it was very enjoyable. I didn't know if I would like it at first, especially as all the main cast have German accents. They all speak in English, obviously, because, it was probably made back when we were too lazy to read subtitles in the Western world. And also, I've said before, I think war films are to a point where I feel like they're almost insulting. Because a lot of people make war films because they know it's an easy way to get critical acclaim, and they often make a decent amount in the box office. Because the amount of war films that come out in the last 5 years that are just so unbearably bland or repetitive or, soulless. Like when Christopher Nolan did Dunkirk. When I watched Dunkirk, and this might be an unpopular opinion, I'm watching it and I'm just going, I don't feel your passion for this, and maybe that's just because of his filmmaking, but I don't feel your passion for this, and I'm just sick and tired of all these war films coming out, because a lot of them aren't worth shit. Still haven't seen 1917, so I can't comment on that. But, I was like, okay, this I enjoyed. I think it was based on a real life story. From what I saw, it actually looked to be somewhat based in reality, not it's based on a true story, like Paranormal Activity, where it's just a flat out lie. Or it's like 3 people died in a desert, and we're just gonna assume that someone with a skin mask and a chainsaw killed them. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, based on a true story. And it does the typical thing at the end, where it's got like the pictures of the real people and what happened to them after the narrative of the film ends. All that good stuff. But I enjoyed it. I think if you've got a lot of time away, if you like a war film, if you like Daniel Craig, if you like a bit of drama, because there is a lot of drama, because it's not set in the war, it's not like set on the home front of Belgium back in 1916, and it's not, set in London during the Blitz. It's like mostly set in a forest. So, but that's kind of why I enjoyed it. I don't know, I just thought it was, and it's an interesting story. It's a story of a group of people that I'd never heard before. Like this, I guess, Jewish freedom fighters, I guess they were. And it felt like there was a meaning behind the film. It felt like people doing it wanted to make it. Sometimes it has a few moments where like, oh wow, and they fell out, because of course they did, we're getting to the third act, But I'd check it out if you have the time and you like a good war film, and if you like Daniel Craig. So, next on the list. This one's like a quick one. So I watched this film on Netflix, it's called Funhouse Massacre, made in 2015, not super expensive. This one's, it's gory, that's cool. It's like a cheesy one. It does the thing which has never really been the same since Scream, in my opinion, where, oh wow, a couple of the characters reference that it's like a horror film and know about these things. Oh, and it's like great. And then even then, it's not a huge part of it. It's like the film can't decide whether it wants to be serious or funny, and it's quite jarring. Because there's this subplot with a female police officer, and it especially in the middle of the film, you see it, like, you have to like wait like 20 minutes to see her again, and you're like, what have you been doing this whole time? And the climax is alright. It's about a bunch of serial killers that basically go to a fun house. What is it called? It's like one of those like haunted attraction things, which is like themed like a fun house, and they decide to like take it over so they can kill people, and it's great. There's some cult stuff in it. There are some good performances. There is some good gore, but it's and there are some particularly funny moments. It's like whatever. If you're a horror fan, if you like gore, if you like horror that isn't very serious, if you like sometimes cheesy dialogue, which I can't tell if it's deliberately cheesy or if it is just cheesy, check it out. And then, final one on the list is the one I watched today, Too Fast, Too Furious. I think the only Fast and Furious film that I hadn't seen until today. I think I've seen Tokyo Drift. Don't remember it, but I think I've actually seen it. And I was worried about it because I was like, okay, so it has Brian in it, but it doesn't have Dominic Toretto in it. And I just associate Fast and Furious with Dom. But, the second, it works. It's got Paul Walker in, and he gives a good performance. It's got Tyrese, I don't know can't remember what his character's name is, but Tyrese. They're actually quite a good duo, and it's interesting that it took them, was it the 5th film it took them to bring them back? I think it was. which I think is actually quite interesting. There's also the other guy whose name I can't remember. He's like the tech. He's the techie one in the newer ones. Was he techie in this? He wasn't really like a tech guy in this film though, but he was a tech guy in the other ones. I don't know. Years pass, people change. But he's not a main character like Tyrese and Paul Walker, but he's like a sort of helping man. There's some CGI shots in this because they decided to use a lot. I don't know if I don't remember the first Fast and Furious having any CGI like car shots in it, but like this one has loads and it really enjoys them. So Too Fast Too Furious, I don't have a lot to say. It was enjoyable. You know, didn't love the CGI shots. It's a good popcorn movie. It's one of the better Fast and Furious films, in my opinion. I think the two leads have great chemistry. I think the plot isn't too convoluted. It's not too long. It's not too cliche, but also it's not like out of the box, if you know what I mean. So yeah, check that out if you can. We had it on our Virgin package because we have the Sky movies. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. There'll be another one probably coming next month. So yeah, and there'll be a lot more Big Finish reviews coming because they're doing like a free audio every month for Corona. So hope you enjoyed. If you did, like, subscribe, hit the bell. Well, that was very seductive, wasn't it?